Well, hello there, music fans. Welcome to yet another episode, another video by Music is a Journey. I said I'd be dropping videos this weekend like pigeons dropping turds from a tree, and this is the third turd that I'm dropping onto the YouTube airwaves. I'm excited about this one, not like I wasn't excited about the others, but I'm excited about this one because this is the Progressive Music Tag of 2025, given to us by Alex over at Beer and Vinyl. I think Alex is a really swell guy. I enjoy watching his videos. He has a lot of enthusiasm about the music he talks about, and he puts in a fair bit of knowledge as well. He is into a variety of different styles, genres, subgenres, and whatnot, but he is also into progressive music. And what I like is that he has made this the progressive music tag, not just the progressive rock tag. I think progressive rock has become a certain style of complex, relatively complex rock music, whereas progressive music, it's a little more open. It's you can actually interpret it in your own way, which I think is what Alex is looking for. He's looking specifically to hear new ideas, fresh takes on how music is progressing. And it also reminds me of something Bill Bruford once said, that the notion of calling a particular style of music progressive seemed to him rather ridiculous, because shouldn't all types of music be progressing? They shouldn't all be staying the same forever. So anyway, here we go with the Progressive Music Tag by Alex at Beer and Vinyl. He's given us 15 questions, and yeah, let's dive into it. Question 1 is your favorite progressive purchase of 2024. And honestly, I was not really into progressive music as much this past year as I normally am. My MO is usually to check in January what people are saying are the top prog and metal albums of the previous year, and then I check several of them out and then buy a few as well, pick up some along the way that I might hear about. But last year my music journey took me off to different places and I didn't touch on prog so much. However, this album popped out just near the end of the year. This is The Last Will and Testament, the latest release, 14th full-length studio album by Opeth. And I really like this album a lot. It's a heavy album, but it's not heavy like metal crunch guitars heavy. It's heavy more in an old school sense, like a 70s heavy sense, but reintroducing the death growl vocals, which we haven't heard for a while. But there's a lot of exciting music, and as is typical for Opeth songs, especially over the last few albums, there are a lot of complexities to the music. There are a lot of change-ups, and you don't get the usual verse-chorus routine. There's orchestra on here, there's flute, there's harp, and clean guitar, electric guitar, organ, pianos, and all this kind of thing. So it's a very exciting album musically, and I find the story quite interesting. Well, each of the songs, each of the tracks is a section of a paragraph of the Last Will and Testament, except for the final track, which actually has a title. The Story Never Told, I think it was. So yeah, I did actually pick up a few other albums during the year that could be considered progressive music, or even are, but I'd say this is my favorite one. So question 2 is the latest discography or deep dive, and once again in 2024 I wasn't really seeking out any type of progressive rock, metal, or music at all. However, I was turned on to one group by Brian at Embryonic Robot, and this was later on reinforced by Ben Rankins down in Australia, and it is a band called the Besnard Lakes. The Besnard Lakes are the Roaring Night. I checked out some of their songs on YouTube, picked one that was from this album, and went to this album here. The song is called Albatross, by the way. And listening to it, I thought, okay, there's definitely some post-rock happening here, there is some shoegaze happening here, and maybe there's something a little extra going on as well. And that's when I checked the Wikipedia page, and it described them as post-rock, shoegaze, and new prog. Now this was interesting because I've heard about neo-prog, which I think the earliest example of that is the Genesis album Trick of the Tail, isn't it? The first album after Peter Gabriel left is often considered the earliest example of new prog. And then you get neo-prog, and then you get all the neo-prog bands to emerge out of England in the 1980s, and then the whole scene developing forth into the 90s. So anyway, that's neo-prog. This is new prog. I mean, which means basically the same thing, but I guess they're different names. So anyway, that would probably be it. I picked up this one, and then more recently I got this one. I actually forgot what the title of this one is. The Besnard Lakes Until in Excess, Imperceptible UFO. I've only just listened to this through once and then a couple of tracks for a second time, so I don't really have that much of an opinion yet. But yeah, both of them similar in the approach. So I don't know, there might be one more Besnard Lakes album I'll get. I'm not going to jump deep in and get everything they have, but so far these two, I rather like them. So I guess that will be my pick for the latest discography, even if it's only 2 albums. Question 3 is an artist or a musician we lost in 2024. And I actually had to look this up because I couldn't remember anyone that was really like an artist that is in my collection. And I actually Googled a list of musicians who passed away, and most of them I didn't recognize. But of course, there was Paul Di'Anno. Now, Paul Di'Anno, singer for Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden aren't, immediately associated with progressive music, although many people will argue that they are in the progressive metal area. Certainly they inspired a lot of progressive metal bands, and I always felt that certain albums like The Debut or Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, or even some of the other tracks there, even some of the more recent ones, are more on the progressive side simply because the songs tend to be more complicated, more drawn out, and lyrically they're a lot deeper than the usual heavy metal stuff. But anyway, Paul Di'Anno, of course, being the lead vocalist for Iron Maiden on the first 2 albums. And I'm picking this one here because I feel this one is the more progressive album of those first 2. Just some of the tracks like Phantom of the Opera, Transylvania, or Strange World, they show the band stretching out more instrumentally. So I'm going to call it an example of early 80s example of progressive metal. Certainly Steve Harris was inspired by a lot of the progressive bands of the 70s anyway. So I'm going with that it was Paul Di'Anno. And I know he's normally associated with giving the more kind of punk sound to Iron Maiden's early albums, and he wasn't really a prog rock guy himself so much, but anyway, he's with those first 2 albums, and especially this one. So, Paul Di'Anno, that's the best I can do. Number 4 is an album from 1975. So I did a video of albums from 1975, and I believe I included this one here. This is Morse Code, formerly known as Morse Code Transmission, and this is, good heavens, the lettering on here is really tricky to read, but yes, La Marche des Hommes. Sorry, La Marche des Hommes. So Morse Code started out as a heavy psychedelic type, progressive type band in the early 70s, but by this album here, I think this is their 3rd, they switched over to more of a symphonic prog style, and the title track does have parts that sound a lot like Yes. They released, I think, 2 or 3 more albums in this style. After that, I'm not sure what they did. But anyway, that is a progressive music, progressive rock album from 1975. Question 5 is a prog subgenre album. Show a prog subgenre album. So I'm going to go with technical thrash metal. This is a band called Droid. This is Terrestrial Mutations. Their tracks are typically somewhere around the 7 to 10 minute mark. There are a lot of changes in the music. There are some slower, clean guitar passages. There are more thrashy passages. And there's a lot of, sorry, the cat just came into the room. There's a striking resemblance to, or a lot of inspiration from Voivod on a number of tracks. Yes, I'll get to you in a moment there, on this album here. So I'm going to say it is technical thrash metal that they are doing. They actually only have, as far as I know, this 1 album and an EP. But anyway, that's that question. Now the cat needs me to open the door. He probably just wants to look. Hi, Kurama. Look outside. Just a moment. Question number 6 is to show an instrumental album or a song. So I'm going to show this band here. It's called Pandora Snail, and they are from the Ukraine. I got this album, probably way back around 2015 or so. I don't know if there's a date on here. But anyway, yeah, they contacted me. They sent me a message on Prog Archives because at that time I was writing reviews quite regularly and asked if I would be interested in reviewing the album, and I ended up buying it. It's got this little booklet in here with pictures of the band and stuff. There's the CD with a snail shell. And then this other part here, this is just really thick, and there's nothing there. There's no like something to take out. There's nothing hiding in there. It's just like this bulletproof shielding for this in case Russia attacks. Geez, did they predict that? Anyway, they are an instrumental band: guitars, drums, bass, keyboards, and as well violin. So there's that, I don't know, kind of like this Windham Hill Records type feel to the music, but the recording quality is really very good. Not to say Windham Hill wasn't, but it reminds me of stuff like Night Noise, if you ever heard of them. So yeah, that's an instrumental album. They released a second album which was live, which I wasn't interested in because I don't really buy live albums so much. And this is number 141 out of 200. Well, that's kind of cool. I didn't remember that. I haven't looked at this for a long time. Was actually listening to some of the tracks from here the other day, though. So that reminded me that there's a lot of piano, violin, and acoustic stuff in there. Are you looking at the door again? One more time. Pause the camera. Anyway, let's see here. Number 7 is a favorite record label. So again, I don't have particularly favorite record labels, but I'm always happy for the chance to talk about Melodic Revolution Records. And they also have, geez, what else do they have? They also have the Power of Prog and Peacock Sunrise labels. So there's a bunch of different labels on there, all under the Melodic Revolution Records labels. This was a thing that they sent me a while back. Oh, looks like I had a promo code in here. I wonder if I ever used that. I was buying a lot of music through them. I can see right here, right now, this is a Marco Ragni album, which I have. This is a Steve Bonino Project album I have. This is a Babel album I have. This is a Kinetic Element album I have. This is another Marco Ragni album I have. This is a Progland album I have. I have a lot of stuff from that label, and especially maybe from around like 2015 and up to about 2018-19, I was buying a lot of stuff from them. And it's not all prog, but a lot of it is, or at least progressive music anyway. And they still send me some download, like a compilation of their previous year's music, usually every year. I do want to buy some of the CDs, but as I said in my previous video, the exchange rate from yen to US dollar is really poor right now, and shipping, especially from the US, is rather expensive. So I haven't bought any Melodic Revolution Records stuff directly from them now for about 3 or 4 years. But anyway, Melodic Revolution Records is a great label with lots of different artists and bands, and a lot of it is progressive rock or progressive music. Now I gotta shut the door. It's actually quite amazing that I got my last 2 videos done without interruption. So let's see here. Number 8, a local hero. Okay, so I live in Japan, and there are a lot of progressive music bands around. Probably the one that I hear mentioned most by people in the VC is Hiromi, a jazz pianist. Knowing that she is a jazz pianist, I haven't felt any interest in checking out her music, but because jazz pianists are not really my thing, jazz is not really my thing, but I recently heard somebody said it's not really jazz piano, it's more like a progressive rock band. So that has me kind of interested. But in the meantime, I'd like to mention another pianist. Actually, I don't know what her last name is now. But anyway, the band is called Yuka and Chronoship, and it is led by the woman named Yuka, who plays all the piano on the album. This is a progressive rock band, so we've got lots of piano, a lot of classical piano in there, but the rest of the band, it's all guitars, bass, drums, and mostly instrumental. There are, listening to it again recently, there are vocals, but it's not sung lyrics. It's more like layers of female vocals singing like a angelic choir-like layers of whatever with the music. So The voices are used as an instrument rather than as a conveyor of lyrics. But that's Yucca and Chronoship. This was their third album, The Third Planetary Chronicles. Their second album has a lot of exciting, more ELP type style based on what I remember hearing. I don't have it, and I don't know what they've been doing recently. But anyway, Yucca and Chronoship from Japan. Number 9 is an artist that deserves more attention. And again, I could pick a lot of the artists off the Melodic Revolution Records label. Plus, I have a lot of artists over here that are not on that label, but people that I'm connected with via Facebook and in older Music as a Journey videos. I actually just contacted these people and sought out permission to use clips of their music in my older videos to introduce their albums. But if I want to pick someone that is fairly well known to people out there, I'm going to go with Eloy. Eloy, I started listening to them again just near the end of last year and picked up this album, Colors, which I think was their 8th album. And then I also picked up Metromania, which was an album of theirs. It was around 1984. So I watched a video that was ranking the first 12 albums of Eloy. And the guy who was doing that talked about this album here and said it was actually a really good album for an 80s album. And there were some really great songs on here. One of the things that I find is really intriguing for me about Eloy is that they went into the 80s and didn't become an 80s pop band. A lot of the prog bands of the 70s, they tried to shed off most of their prog baggage and become more stripped down rock bands, just, you know, perhaps a little bit more musically advanced than some of the other typical bands. But Eloy still continue the same kind of approach that they did from the end of the 70s. Yes, they adopted a lot of the 80s sounds, the 80s technology. There's a really great 80s metal guitar solo on one of the tracks here. Plus you've got the electronic drums coming in and so on. But overall, they're still doing what if you heard any of their stuff from the late 70s, they're still doing that here in the 80s, just in a new way. So Eloy is definitely a band I think that need more attention. Now I have 7 albums. There are 2 more from the 70s that I can get, that I will get. The debut is, forget it, it's really hard to get. Plus there's an album of theirs from the early 90s, which I have my sights on, which when I'm listening to it on YouTube, I was very impressed with it. Like really, they were a prog band of the 90s that this other new prog stuff that was coming out then. So yeah, Eloy for that one there. An artist that deserves more attention. Number 10 is an interesting one. It's a contrarian opinion. So what is an opinion? Yeah, well anyway, a contrarian opinion about progressive music. So here's something that I have thought for years. Progressive rock basically kicked off with In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. There's stuff leading up to it. You could argue Sgt. Pepper's was part of that. People say Procol Harum were leading up to it. You could even say like Vanilla Fudge, or going back even to the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Frank Zappa. But for the most part, the ball drops into play with King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King. As well, heavy metal starts around 1970, beginning of 1970, with Black Sabbath's debut album, or you could say it was Led Zeppelin's debut album, or you could say it was Blue Cheer from 68, or some people way back when would even have put it back to 1966 with Cream's debut album. Anyway, my idea is that heavy metal and progressive rock both emerged, at least in the UK or Europe, out of the same nebula of garage rock, blues rock, psychedelic rock coming together, mixing in with classical, a classical approach to composing or inspirations from classical music. And then both of them came forward. Some of them were more clearly in the prog, symphonic prog, or jazz fusion prog areas. Some of them were more obviously in the heavy rock areas. But some of them sat there in the middle, a band like T2 or High Tide, where you hear the heavy guitars, you hear the screaming guitar solos, but at the same time, the longer compositions with more complexity in the music, sometimes adding in additional instruments. So I feel like the first steps of progressive metal, which is taking the styles of heavy metal and combining it with the approach of prog, like we said with Iron Maiden's debut, I feel that actually happened already back in 69, 70. And you need to look no further than 21st Century Schizoid Man, which is a bloody heavy track in 1969. But then you have all this dancing part in the middle with the drums and the saxophones and everybody going crazy there. So yeah, that's my contrarian opinion, that progressive metal came out on the scene as a kind of bridging point or meeting point between progressive rock and the first wave of heavy metal. Number 11, who did it better, a prog band covering a song or a band covering a prog song? So I'm going to pick two here. First of all, from the Yes debut reissue with bonus tracks, there is Something's Coming. It's one of my favorite Yes tracks, and I just love what they did to that. It has this wonderful introduction, a little bit of a drum solo, very groovy music to it. Peter Banks on the guitar hitting in there, and then the song goes on in very typical Yes fashion with these wonderful chorus vocals. In fact, I think it was Chris Welch who said that that song typifies what Yes were trying to do better than any song on the actual album. So yes, I've always loved that one there. It's one of those songs that I can listen to anytime. So there's that, and then another one is April Wine covering 21st Century Schizoid Man. Now, April Wine, they're a rock band. Sometimes a hard rock band, mostly a rock band. Great songs about rock and roll, about relationships, and wonderful ballads. And then they, on track 8 here of Harder Faster from, what was it, this one says 1978 or 79 anyway. The last track is their cover of 21st Century Schizoid Man, and they nail it. So we're looking at a band with 3 guitarists, drums and vocals, and 1 guitarist as a lead vocalist. Yeah, they totally nail that song. It's a very impressive performance. So, well done. Okay, number 12, still going strong. Well, you could pick Uriah Heep or Deep Purple, either of them. And I'm going with Deep Purple just because I just got this album a couple of months back. Uriah Heep, I got their latest album last year when it came out. So I'm picking Deep Purple this time. Yeah, Deep Purple, they are essentially a hard rock band, but since the very beginning, they were always very talented musicians, and it was quite easy for them to slip off and do something a little bit on the proggy side before returning back to their, hard rock center of the song. So, yeah, this album, I don't know how much of it you want to say is progressive rock or whatever, but Deep Purple can do it if they want to. You got Don Airey on keyboards, even with, Steve Morse with the Dixie Dregs and with Kansas and with his own stuff there. He was a prog musician. Now, of course, it's Simon McBride on here, so I don't know exactly how much of what his prog pedigree is. But anyway, for a band that at least is associated with progressive rock or progressive music, Deep Purple still going strong and, yeah, sounding very good on this album, I think. Okay, 3 more to go. Number 13, that's not prog, is it? A band or artist that some might think is not prog. So again, I am going to mention Caribou, which I've been mentioning recently quite a bit. So this is the album Addicted, which goes back to 2014. And this album and the one that came before it, a lot of the songs are just like melodic rock songs. You could have, say that they were inspired by a lot of the big AOR bands from the late 70s, early 80s. You could name Asia if you wanted to. So very good, catchy, melodic choruses and, some rock guitar and so on. But some of the songs do move into a little bit more expanded territory. And in later albums, I think that was explored more. There are conceptual albums, there are longer pieces, there are tracks with saxophone parts or harp or where, the rhythm changes up or the song has a different kind of intro. It is more obvious on the later albums. However, this album which I feel it is less obvious, was it's a German band, and the main guy who actually wrote and recorded everything on here is one fella, Oliver Rusing. He submitted this album to the German Pop and Rock Music Awards or something like that, and this album won for Best Progressive Release. So, as I said, listening to some of the tracks sounds more like very catchy melodic rock. And I mentioned it to Oliver because I'm connected with him on Facebook as well. He gave me permission to feature music from his albums in older Music as a Journey videos. And he said, yeah, a lot of the tracks, they are like that, but it is a kind of deception. If you listen carefully, the drumming is actually quite complex, or the rhythms or the layers in the music is actually quite complex. So it comes off sounding like a simple melodic rock song, but there's a lot of depth to it, a lot of stuff actually going on behind those really catchy melodies. So yeah, there you go. I'm saying that Carabau's Carabao. I keep saying Carabao. It's Carabao. Anyway, Carabau's album Addicted from 2014. All the rest of my Carabao albums are here. I have 9 altogether. There are 3 I'm missing, which I might consider ordering. Okay, let's see here. Number 14. I love this one. Girls don't like prog, do they? Haha. Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Alex, because in the last year or two, I've been really getting into female artists of any genre, it seems, related to rock. So I'd like to mention Frequency Drift, who appeared in my 2018 year-end video. This is their album Letters Tomorrow. In that video, I had permission from them, actually from their record label, to feature some music in that video. So there were 2 songs featured in that video. So who have we got on here? Who have we got on here? This band features 2 women. One of them is Irini Alexia, I think her name is, and she is the vocalist. And the other one is Marissa Schwartz, who plays electric harp and harp on here. This is a pretty cool band. Their songs are mostly rather mellow, but they have like a darker side where it actually almost gets into like a kind of dark industrial, but without being really too aggressive feeling, just more dark feeling. They've got very lighter sides. Their lead vocalist, she sings very theatrically at times. Sometimes it sounds like she is in a musical, and you can picture her standing at the front of the stage singing her lines. But of course, we've also got the harp showing up in a lot of the tracks on here. So yeah, 2 ladies in this band here. A lot of the prog bands I know of just have a female vocalist. So I'm mentioning Frequency Drift because they've got a female instrumentalist as well. Also, they just put out another album, I think near the end of last year, because I was getting tagged on Facebook. They remembered me. They've got a few albums out now anyway. So Frequency Drift from Germany. Okay, and then we come to question number 15, an artist or band you'd like to dive into or get into this year. So one of them, I keep hearing people talking about this Bing Lizard and the Wizard Blizzard. King Blizzard, the Wizard, the Lizard. You know what? I'm just going to get into the Japanese artist Zard. I think that's just going to be a heck of a lot easier than trying to remember this band's name. But she's not prog. Anyway, no. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I heard so much about them from Ben Rankins, from Larry Graves, and a few other people. I'm really interested. The thing is that these guys drop out albums, like 2 or 3 albums a year, if not more. It's very hard to keep up. But for now, I just like to check out one, and if I really like that, I'll check out a couple more. Rather frustratingly, the album that Ben Rankins recommended to me is not available on CD in Amazon Japan. There are about like 15 albums available, but not the one that Ben Rankins recommended. So I'll have to pick out a couple of their other ones. They have 3 or 4 albums rated over 4 out of 5 on the Prog Archive. So those ones, 3 of those ones I can get a hold of. And also, Brian at Embryonic Robot and Ben Rankins as well mentioned Godspeed You Black Emperor. I checked out their music years ago, but being that they are a post-rock band with very long tracks, It's not like you can just listen for 10 seconds to a track, listen 10 seconds to another track and go, okay, I think I get the idea. I'm going to buy the album. I think I really have to give it a good listen. And now there are so many albums to choose from. So where do I start? Anyway, I'll be looking at those two then. King Gizzard and the Wizard of Oz. Damn it, that one. And Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Okay, those are my answers to the 15 questions given to us by Alex. Everybody else, hey, let's see what you got to say about it. Alex, thank you. And yeah, thanks for watching this one, everybody. See you in another video. I think I'll be doing the metal tag next. So yeah, if you care, watch out for that one. Bye all. Take care.